It's Michael Von Williams, the Sprinkler Man, and today I'm going to show you how to install a lawn sprinkler system, step by step. So first of all, what you want to do is find the water source. In a residential property, you'll usually have a water meter. Now in some instances you might have a well, and that's a little bit different installation, but today I'll talk about a residential property that has a water meter. So what I like to do is find the water meter, because that way I can see what size it is. The smaller the size water meter, the less amount of water you have that will go through the pipe. So in Texas, primarily, there's a 5/8 inch meter, a 3/4 inch meter, or a 1 inch meter. And on this one, what I found was this was a 3/4 inch meter. So that's going to allow me to put a few more heads on the zone, and that will reduce the number of zones that may be required. And I like to find a water meter because what we have to do is tie into the line, the water line, before it goes into the house. So if you find the water meter, usually, of course, it's going to go to the house. So you can tap into that line anywhere in between the water meter and the house. So on this property, what I found is that the water line actually comes out of the ground first. So it comes out of the ground, and then it goes into the house. Now this one has been insulated to reduce the chance of it freezing. So once they found the water line, what they did was they tied into it with a T, and then they put a shutoff valve. So after the shutoff valve, what they did was they put the backflow device, backflow assembly device. And what that device is a protective device. What it does is protects the client's drinking water as well as the city drinking water from anything that could possibly back up into the system if for some reason there was a reduced amount of pressure. So there you have it. Now what I'm going to do is show you step by step on how to install a lawn sprinkler system. I will not be digging in the ground to put the pipe in, so I'll be showing you all of this above ground. Now, I'm not going to tie into the existing water meter, but what I'll do is I'll use the faucet, the hydrant, the faucet from the house as the water line. Now, you don't normally do that because you won't have enough pressure to power all your heads. But for illustrative purposes, what I'll show is this being the water line. So we'll act like this is our water line. Of course, it's above ground. So what I'll have to do is cut this water line, and I'll put a shutoff valve in between, and then I'll start building the sprinkler system. To give you an idea of what all is involved with the installation, what we have here are the different parts that will be used. So here's a backflow device, and I'm just showing you this one. I'm not going to install the backflow device because just a little bit too much, and I'll end up having to cut it loose anyway. But I wanted to show you what's involved with installing that. You have what's called a male adapter. You'll need 2 male adapters, one here and then one here. Then after that, you need a 90 in order to 90 down, and then another 90 to then start running to your sprinkler system. Prior to connecting to your sprinkler system though, you would install a shutoff valve with a T. So in this case, you have your shutoff valve installed. Water goes in to the backflow device, comes out, then goes to your sprinkler system. So now let's get started. So what I'll do is I'll show you a water line, and I'm going to install the shutoff valve. Normally, what would happen is you would get your cutters you would turn your water off and then use a T to put your shutoff valve in, because that water is going to continue to go to the house. So you want to make sure that you don't block the water and make it have to go through your sprinkler just to go in the house. So what you do is you use this T, and the T would allow water to go in one direction and then come out this direction. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is I'll cut off the water here. Now normally this would be that water line in between the water meter and the house. So let's say this is your water line going to your house. This would actually continue going on to the house. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this here somewhere, and then I'll put a T on it. So let's see how that works. Okay, so now I get my cutters. Now I'm going to cut this pipe. Of course, that'll be a little bit of water that shoots out of here because that was on. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is put a T on it. And the way I install a T is I use some solvent glue. So here's my glue. And you usually want your water to stop running. I can stop it a little bit here by raising it. But if you're in the yard, you won't be able to do it like that, but we can here. So put my glue on. Put my T on. And remember, since it is a residential property that you install into, you have to make sure that that other side is connected. Otherwise, when you turn that water on, it's going to just shoot out constantly. So this side will continue to go to the house. So for now, what I'm going to do is just reconnect that. And I'm going to put a shutoff valve on. And the reason I like to put the shutoff valve on is because if for some reason there's a break, let's say it's your backflow device, I can shut off the water to the sprinkler without shutting off the water to the house. So that's why I installed the backflow, the shutoff valve here. So I'll get another little piece of pipe. So there's a little piece of pipe, and I'm going to install this shutoff valve. Get most of my water out of there. Usually I'll have a towel. I like to put glue on both sides on the pipe as well as the fitting. Push that in. Now here's my shutoff valve. This is a slip by slip, which means it'll just slip on the pipe. I put the glue on. Both sides again. And push that on. That's it. Now we're ready to start building the sprinkler. So what happens now is that pipe will come out of the shutoff valve. Then, normally what we would do is install a backflow device. So remember, we use our 2 male adapters and our 90. That would go to the sprinkler line, the water line. So this is my water line for my sprinkler. And on your backflow device, it actually has an arrow that shows you what goes in first. So you see the arrow there. So that means that you come in from the bottom here, then it goes through the device and then come out in the direction of the arrow. So normally we would have that installed after we put this part in. But since I'm not going to install a backflow device on this just for illustration purposes, what I'm going to start doing now is just building my sprinkler system. Okay, here we go. Okay, so for this, what I need to do is I'm going to put a piece of pipe on in the T, the shutoff valve. Okay. Now what I'll do, I need to install my valves. And what the valves are used for is to determine what section of the yard gets covered, because if we try to cover everything at one time, we wouldn't have enough water pressure in order to do it. So what I'm going to do is install 2 valves. And so this is like you having 2 sections of your yard covered. So what I'll do, first of all, is point out something with the valve. With each valve, now I'm using 2 different valves just to show you, 2 manufacturers. This is a 1-inch valve, and it would normally just fit right on this 1-inch piece of pipe. And then on the other side, it would be 1 inch. But what I'm going to do is use a smaller piece of pipe coming out. So what I did was I used something called a reducer bushing. And I'll just show you what a reducer bushing is. This is a reducer bushing. And with the reducer bushing, what it allows you to do is to make the other side smaller. You're reducing it. So I would put glue on it, push that in, and then it will be smaller, and then that way I can put my smaller pipe in there. Otherwise, if I try to connect that pipe, it wouldn't fit. So that's what the reducer bushing is. I've already installed a reducer bushing in both of these valves. The thing I want to point out with the valves is that it does make a difference as far as what side you install it on. And it shows an arrow. There's a tail end of an arrow, and then there's a tip of the arrow. So you install it to where the water's going in one direction, that has the tail of the arrow, and then comes out where the tip of the arrow is. That's one manufacturer. This manufacturer, it just shows one arrow, but it shows flow. So the flow would flow through here and then flow outwards. On the point of it, at the tip of it, front of it, it has a part of an arrow. So same thing, but that's very important because if you install it backwards, then it won't open at all. So let's go ahead and get started on this. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to put a 90 on this. And of course, there are different types of fittings. This is a 90 because what I want to do is have my valve going that direction. Okay. But I'm going to do something a little different here. And what you can see is that there are different types of fittings based on what you're going to do. So what I'm going to do is put these two valves not too far away from each other. So instead of that 90, what I'm going to do is use a T, because I'm going to have two valves. So that'll be one valve here, and then I can put pipe on this side and then come out on the other way. So here we go. Again, with my glue. And put this T on. Okay, it's kind of like a erector set. And now, I'm going to put another piece of pipe on this side. And now what I'll do is I'll put a 90. That way I can put my second valve. If I wanted to put a third valve, I could put another T and keep going. And many times you'll have more than two zones, so you'll use multiple fittings in order to get what you need to do. But I'm just showing you installing two zones. Okay. So now, what I'm going to do is install my valves. So, again, remember, it's really important that you install it the proper way. It's only one way to install it where it'll work. If you install it backwards, the water won't go through. So what I'll do is put a little piece of pipe there. And I can do it either way. I can put it on here first, which I'll do that. Put this pipe on, put this in here. Now what I'm going to do is install my valve. So I kind of like to hold it down with that way so much glue won't get inside of it. Put that on both sides again. And this is actually a slip valve. Some valves, they have a threaded portion, and so that'll be, you can tighten it up by screwing it in. Okay, now I'll put my second valve in. Okay, get a little piece of pipe. Second valve, a little piece of pipe. Make sure, again, you install it where it's going with the flow. Look at that arrow. Constantly do that, because what you don't want to do is install it and then have to cut it out. And this one I did this side first, and now I'll put it in the fitting. You can do it both ways. Put it in the fitting first, or you put it in the valve first. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. So, put my glue on. Push that valve in. Get that straight. Okay. So now we've installed two valves, and the valve is going to determine what section of the yard comes on when. So now what I want to do is install a head. So with the heads, what I'll do is I'll get my pipe first, because what I'm going to do is use a pipe to show where the head is going to go. So I'm going this direction, so I'm going to use this pipe. I'll install it in the front part of the valve, which is the exit point of the valve. So water goes in the back of the valve, comes out of the front. So now what I'll do is I'll install this 3/4 inch pipe Remember, I reduced this valve to a 3/4 inch pipe. Put that on. Glue the front part of the fitting in the valve. Push that in. And now we have water going in the back, and then it's going to come through the front. Okay. Now, since I'm going to have 2 zones, I have some more pipe. And these will cover different areas. So, right now, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my glue on my pipe. Then the front part of the valve. In this case, it's reduced to 3/4. Push that in. And it only takes, a minute, even less than that, to dry. So now, notice on each valve we have 2 wires. And we'll talk about that once we get ready to connect it to the controller. So, what we've done so far is we've tied into our water line. We put a T on the water line, put a shut-off valve in, more pipe, then we put 2 valves in. So here are the 2 valves we put in. And then we put pipe running to the area that we're going to water. So now what I'll do is I'll get the heads that I'm going to put on there. So notice at the pipe, of course, the ends are open. So these ends are open. I want to put a head on this end. And in my second zone, where the second pipe is, I'm going to put a head on this side. So what I'll need to do that is I'm going to put a threaded 90, since I'm only going to add 1 head. And this fitting is a threaded 90, so it's 90 degrees, and then one side of it is threaded. This is a 1/2 inch thread. So I'm going to use 2 of these. I'll use 2 heads. So these are the 2 heads I'm going to install. Actually, I'll install 1 head like this, and then 1 head like this. This is a rotary head. Now, I don't have the inside piece to put in there, so what I may do is just go ahead and just install the 2 valves, the 2 spray heads. So on these spray heads, what you do is you lift the inside part up, unscrew that, put a filter in it, and then you put a nozzle. And there are different types of patterns and different ranges that they spray. So for this illustration, I'm going to use a 4-foot sprayer, and I can adjust it anywhere from 0 degrees to a full circle, 360 degrees. So I'm going to do that for 2. That's 1. Same thing for the second one. I lift that out, that neck, that's called a neck, with the nozzle. Put my filter in, and I'll put the nozzle for this one. And I'm going to use the same size nozzle. So we have 2 heads here. Now on the heads, at the bottom of them, there's a hole. And this is where you connect the fitting to connect to your flex tubing. In this particular case, I'm going to use flexible tubing in order to connect my head. So I'll do that for both heads. That's how you connect that. And now I'm going to take my 2 pieces of flex tubing and 2 more. These are called barb 90s because there's a barb at the end which you push into this side of the pipe and also the other side of the pipe. So I'll take these 2, and now what we're going to do is install these into the 2 ends of the pipe that we installed into the valves. So what I'll do is I'll put one head here at this short one. My flex tubing, drop that there. And then prepare to do the same thing for the next one. Okay, so now what I need to do is connect that barb 90 to the threaded 90s. So remember, I have the two threaded 90s. And so what I'll do is install a threaded 90 at the end of both of these pipes. Now, if I was planning on adding more than one head, which a lot of times, most of the times you are, that's something called a threaded T. And what the T allows you to do is to make a connection and keep the water flowing. So if I wanted to, what I could do is use what's called a threaded T. I could cut this pipe and then add a T there. That would allow the water to keep moving. So the water goes in, keeps moving, and also comes here. Then I'd put another barb fitting here, and then I could put another head there. But just to keep this simple, I'm only going to install one head on each of these pieces of pipe. Okay, so what I'll need is my barb 90 and my threaded 90. So I'll glue this 90 on the end of this pipe. So here's the end of that pipe. So I'll glue that on. And sometimes what I like to do is go ahead and put this barb in there. I'll go ahead and do that. And you just screw it in. So now what I'll do is put this 90 on the end. So I'll get my glue. And I put my 90 on. Now, what I'll do is I'll take one of those heads, take my flex tubing, and I'll push that flex tubing on the end of that barb 90. And you can put it on either the barb 90 at the end of the pipe first or your head first. It doesn't matter. And you can cut this flex tubing with the same cutters that you use to cut your PVC pipe. But I'm just going to leave it like it is. So I'll take that other end and I'll push that on to that barb 90. So now, as you see, I'm pushing this on. And you sort of work it on. And because it's a barbed fitting, it won't come out off of there because it's barbed. And so that'll keep it from slipping off. If it was just a flat, smooth fitting, then when the water pressure hits it, then it would just shoot off of there. So now that head is actually installed. So there it is. So now we'll do the same thing for the second head. So go to the end there. And what I'll do is get my glue again. And I'm going to screw that barb 90 into the end of the threaded 90. The threaded end of the threaded 90. Screw that in. Okay. I've already installed the barb at the end of my sprinkler head. So now I'll just glue this on to the end of the pipe. Get my flex tubing. I'm going to push that on to the end of the sprinkler head and push that in. You just kind of work it a bit. And now I put the other end into the end of the other pipe that has a barb fitting in it. So work that in. Okay. So that head is now in. So we have 2 heads installed. There's the second head, right there. And then our first head is there. So now, actually, everything is installed if we just wanted a manual system. So what I'll do is I'll turn the water on, and then we'll check it to see if these sprinkler heads come on. Now, the valves are in a normally closed position. So if we wanted to check it, what we'd have to do is open the valves. But first of all, let me turn the water back on. So I'll turn this on. So you hear the water coming on. So now, the valves are doing what they're supposed to do. So the valves will hold the water behind the valves. So these should not open unless we get a signal from the controller or unless we turn it on manually. So what I'm going to do now is manually turn on the first valve. Let's say this one right here. So if everything works right, that head should come on. And there we go. You've installed your first sprinkler system. So we'll turn that off. So you see it does work. Now I'll turn it off manually here. I'm just going to turn it off manually. And you see it's going off. Now I want to see if the second one works also. So we'll turn that one on manually. And there it works also. So now you've installed your first sprinkler system. And I turned it off, so that should be shutting off. And it does. So that means everything was installed properly. But we want an automatic lawn sprinkler system. So for the automatic lawn sprinkler system, what you'll need is a controller, and you'll need wires for that. Of course, you'll need an electrical source for it if it's not battery operated. Most of them, we just use just regular 110 outlet, 120. So what I'll do is I'll look at my 2 wires. Each valve has 2 wires. And there's something called a common wire, and then you have your zone wire. Usually, we'll choose to have our common wire white. The color is white. And that will be connected to both valves, and then it runs to your controller. So let me just show you how to connect those 2 wires. Okay, you need cutters. These are wire cutters. And then I have wire here. So I'm going to take my white wire. Here's my white wire here. So take my white wire, cut it. And the reason I'm cutting it is because I have to connect these 2 valves together. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, normally, what you want to do is use waterproof connectors. And this is one type of waterproof connector. It has gel on the inside of it, and that helps to keep the wires from rusting out so quickly. But since this is not going to be buried in the ground, Now this is just for illustration purposes. I'm going to use these regular connectors. These are wire connectors. So I get my white wire. And what I'll do is come over to my valves. So as I'm at the valves, what I do is I get a wire from each valve, just one wire. And I'm going to connect one white wire. So I'll get my wire strippers and cutters, and I'll strip off part of this protective coating or this insulation, wire insulation. And I'm going to connect one white wire to it. And then I'll put my connector on there. And now I want to connect that to my other valve. Strip the wire off there, grab one wire, using a connector. Again, if we were burying this in the ground, we'd use waterproof connectors, but these are just regular wire nuts. Now, with this one though, I want to have the other wire, because this has to go, we have to run this wire to the controller. Okay, so we'll have two pieces of white wire in this one and the common for this valve. Okay, so now those two are connected. We have to run that white wire now to our controller. So let's do that. So my white wire, I'm going to connect that to the controller. Here's my controller. This is an old controller that I have, but most of it works. So here's my white wire. So this is called my common wire. I'm going to take off a little bit of that insulation. And if you look at the controller, it has something that says COM. And that COM, that's for common. So I will install that into my controller. I want to make sure my controller is plugged in. So I'll plug the controller in. Okay. So now we have our common wire installed. Now we just need to install our zone wire. Now, there are different types of zone wires. You have some that is single strand wire, and then other that's multi-strand wire. Now with your multi-strand wire, you have different colors in one jacket. And so let's say you're going to use two zones. In this case, you might say, I'm going to use a blue wire and a yellow wire. And then my common wire, I'm going to use the white. And so you could do that with multi-strand wire, but I'm just using the single strand just because it's a little bit easier. I don't have to cut the wire off the jacket or anything like that. But that is another option. So let's show how to install the zone. Okay, we have our white wire connector, which is our common wire. Now what I'm going to do is use a red wire for each one of these valves. It'll be a single strand running from one valve all the way to the controller. So I'll grab a wire here. So here's one red wire. Now what I'm going to do, again, I'll strip off a little bit from front of it. And that second wire, what I'll do there is I'll connect that to that, what we call zone wire. Use a connector, screw that on, and now we go to our controller, and then we connect that, let's say, to zone 1. So I'll show you how to do that. Make sure that it's the the wire that you want. And of course, when you're in the field like that, you're running the wire directly to it, and you don't have different wires flying on the ground like this. Okay, so here's my red wire to that zone. So again, I strip off a little bit of the end. Okay. Now I'm going to put that on zone 1 in our controller, because the controller actually shows different numbers. So 1, in this particular case, 1 through 8. Now this is an old controller, so I'm hoping zone 1 still works. Okay, so that's connected. So that red wire runs from the controller all the way to that valve. Now I'm going to get another second wire for the zone, and that's another red wire. And what I'll do there is I'll connect that to the valve. Since I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and do is connect this end to the controller. I'll make that zone 2. Cut that off. Push that in for zone 2. Now what I'll do is I'll take the other end and I'll connect that to the other valve. So here's the other end, and that other wire that was not connected, what I'll do is I'll connect this wire to that valve. So here's that wire. Now I'll take this little cover off that it was shipped with. Put my wire here and my connectors. So now we'll turn it on from the controller and see if it works. So if we've done everything right, if our controller works, then it should come on. So what I'm going to do is put some time on zone 1. It shows 10 minutes. Zone 2. Let's see if we can get that to come on. Okay, there we go. So now what I'm going to do is manually turn our control on. So if I hit this button, it should come on. It's showing 10. We hear some time, and there it is. So now you've installed an automatic lawn sprinkler system. That's zone 1. So now what I want to do is shut zone 1 off and go to zone 2. And there's zone 2. So zone 1 shut off. Zone 1 shut off, then zone 2 came on. So that's how you install an automatic lawn sprinkler system. Now, one other thing I want to show you, though, is how to install a rain sensor, because the way this is set up, if it rained, the sprinkler may be set to come on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at a certain time, run for a certain amount of time. Well, if you don't have a rain sensor, if it rained or not, your sprinkler is still going to come on. So that's not the best use of water. I'm just shut this off. I'm going to show you one other thing. Okay, remember our common wire. That goes from our controller to the valves. So if we interrupted the flow of electricity from our controller to the valve, then that could keep the system from coming on. And I'll just show you what I mean. So if we cut that common wire in between that controller and that first valve, then it's not going to come on at all. So I'll just show you exactly. So again, our white wire. Now white wire is our common wire. So if I cut that common wire, now if I turn the sprinkler system on manually, now remember it was working previously, turn it on manually, showing that it's on, but it's not coming on. The reason for that is because the circuit has been broken. So when I cut that main line, that main common wire, that meant that the signal coming from the controller going through the white wire to our valve is now stopped. And that's how you can also install an automatic rain sensor. This is one automatic rain sensor, since it's a wired version. And what I'll do with it, I'm going to install that in between where those two cuts are made. Now this has wire. You can take this loose. I'm not going to take it loose, but I'm going to show you how to connect it. So we'll take this waterproof, this rain sensor, and I'm going to use connectors, waterproof connectors. Well, in this case, they won't be waterproof since I'm not going to bury it. Normally I would use waterproof connectors, but I'm going to use these connectors to connect this rain sensor in between where I made the cut. So on the rain sensor, it has two wires. In this case, a black wire and a red wire. And then it has a little button here at the top where you can actually determine the level of water or the amount of water for it to interrupt the system. So it'll be, well, this shows 1/8, 1/4, and 3/4, 1/2 inch, and so forth. So I'm going to install this right quick, let you see how it's done. Okay, so my wire, I cut it. I'm going to splice, I'm going to remove the insulation on both sides of those two that I cut. Now what I'm going to do is I'll take those two wires that I showed you, and it doesn't matter which one. I'll put one wire on one side of the white wire that I cut, put my connector. Now the other side of the white wire, my common wire that I cut, I'll connect that to the other side. Okay. Now what's going to happen is you'll get a signal from the controller. It runs through my common wire. Then it goes one side through my rain sensor. Then it comes out the other wire, then goes to the valve. So what I should be able to do is turn the controller on and the system comes on. And then what I should be able to also do is press that little button at the top of the rain sensor to interrupt the circuit, and it should shut off. So let's see if it works. Okay, I'm going to get my controller working here again. I want to start zone 1. Okay, zone 1 is coming on, see? Zone 1 is now on. So our rain sensor was installed. Now what I want to do is see if it breaks the circuit if I push this button. If I push this button and the sprinkler stops, then it's working properly. So you see the water now. I'm going to press the top of this and we'll see if it shuts off. And it did. You heard the water stop. So that means now I let it go, so it came back on again. So the way that works is there's a cork on the inside of that little rain sensor. Once it gets wet, it expands, pushes down, and it breaks the circuit. Once it dries out, then that allows it to shrink and then allows the circuit to be completed again. So you can set it at 1/8 of an inch, quarter, 3/4, ½ inch. Depends on how sensitive you want it to be. But now you have installed an automatic lawn sprinkler system. What you did was you identified the water source, you tied into that, put a T in it, put a shut-off valve in, added 2 valves, and you added 2 heads. I'm going to turn this off. There's no point in having that on now. I actually went to zone 2. So you installed 2 valves, installed 2 heads, and you made it automatic by installing the wire in a controller. And then what you also did was put in a rain sensor. So that way you're not having your lawn sprinkler come on when it's raining. So hopefully you've learned something from this on how to install a lawn sprinkler system and how to install an automatic lawn sprinkler system from the Sprinkler Man, Michael Von Williams, Aquamatic Irrigation.